Welcome back to the new tribe. We are on a little field trip today. We're here in the very cozy house belonging to Danny and Kaw, who are our Zach's fellow Canadians who live part-time down here in Texas, and we get to enjoy their company for what they consider the warm months of the year.
Which we're enjoying immensely.
Oh my gosh, which I love that the bus is so cozy and so warm today because I am every layer of warm clothing that I own, I've been wearing daily because I can't with this cold front. So I'm so grateful to be here with y'all today and you're warm, beautiful.
And thank you so much. We were so grateful to be here with you in this moment. I just want to say, I think we have to introduce Charlie as well because you could hear as we were saying hello, he was also wanting to be.
He was, hi, Charlie.
So he's our lovely dog. He's a therapy dog. He's in training.
Oh, hello.
And he does a really good job of loving people.
Yes,
as we travel from place to place.
All right, so welcome to the podcast. I was so excited that y'all agreed to come and chat with me today because I find your work so very fascinating. And I got to experience it the first time when Scarlett had a headache at New Year's and you tapped with her. So I'd love to hear more about how you came into facilitating this practice and how you came to do this work with people because I find it so fascinating and got to see in real time the positive benefits of it.
I think you just started.
I believe it best explained is we'll tell you about how Kasha and I met. And it was interesting because I showed up at her studio. She was a Pilates instructor and had her own studio and showed up there to do acro yoga. And I noticed that she had some pain in her body. And so I taught her this tapping technique that I've been teaching people for a few years. And it was able to alleviate her pain. And during that process of alleviating pain, because you can tap into other people's emotions. And I saw something inside of Ka that I had never seen inside of another. And instantly fell in love with her.
Oh.
And as we moved through and we started using tapping to manage emotions and manage the things that were going on, we realized the benefit of how to teach people how to manage trauma and how to release trauma. So actually those events that they've had happen in their life to actually release themselves from them and change their own frequency within that. So
ultimately it was Danny who brought EFT to us. And when we first met, and Danny noticed that I was in so much discomfort, so much pain, which was beautiful because I thought I was doing a really good job at that time in my life of kind of hiding it from even myself. But Danny noticed, and when he sat down with me that first time, it was so completely inwardly life-changing. Like he, in 15 minutes, took me to probably one of the biggest events at that time in my life, my car accident when I was a child. And he helped me to resolve some of those feelings I had from that moment, something I'd never even anticipated could happen. So he had me hooked. He had me hooked right then and there. And, but, when he came through the door, I also, something inside me also stirred. It was like a part of me knew and was waiting for this man for a very, very long time. So when we came together and we got together and we fell in love with each other so deeply, we also realized that we were both pretty traumatized people. And we both had quite a bit on our individual plates. Mm-hmm. And we realized that we did not want to lose each other. Mm-hmm. And that became paramount. We wanted to make sure that we could maintain a relationship regardless of all that stuff we had in the past. So tapping became our number one go-to. And we began going inwardly with such a determination that ultimately what we now do, we call Feeling Path Illuminated, started as just a loving path for Danny and I to ensure that we could keep being together and loving each other.
Yeah, we made a proclamation to each other at the very beginning. We said, we not only want to become more in this life, but we want to become the most in this life. So when you make a proclamation like, I want to become the most in this life, that means I have to let go of everything I was before. All those times I thought I was right, all those times I defended my point, all those things like that. And this is where we started to notice the limitations of EFT. EFT, great tool for relief.
Amazing tool.
Can you explain what EFT means?
EFT is emotional freedom technique. It was developed by Gary Craig back in the 90s, and it is a valuable tool used worldwide.
We have a really big spot in our heart for Gary Craig and the work he's done in emotional freedom technique. But we found at a certain point in our own discovery and our own desire to heal our wounds from the past, we were noticing that we were relieving the tension, but we were never getting down to the release. And so energetically, we began to feel this overabundance of tense energy. And at a certain point, we almost felt like this, almost an emergency. Like we have to release this energy, because if we don't release this energy, it's going to release itself in a way that's not going to be beneficial for either of us. Mm-hmm. And it was with that in our hearts that Danny, because he was the one who ultimately came up with the words release. Mm-hmm. And once he brought that into the tapping sequence, and my contribution has been the different types of, like, what we've actually changed some of the locations of where we tap, because our aim is to access as much of the brain connection to get and the subconscious, and to make it more accessible. So we do a lot more tapping on the head at different points to specifically invigorate and enliven certain parts of the brain. So we understand that the brain is floating. It's very it's almost like a hard jello, okay, and it's floating in a sack of water. So we know that if you tap, like when you have a glass and you tap on that liquid, you know it's going to create a ripple effect. Yes. So we are doing exactly the same with our brain. Mm-hmm. And so we're consciously deciding that we're going to reprogram certain neural roots. Yeah. And that's what TRT does. TRT goes into that deeper subconscious level, and it helps to break those patterns, those deep-seated patterns, and finally release them. But it was Danny who ultimately brought the word release into the tapping, and that made all the difference. And that was the birthplace of TRT, trauma release technique.
And there was needed in there with TRT. The second stage of this was to actually, because it's one thing to take something away, to take an emotion or a frequency away, but it needs to be replaced with something. So we likened it to, if you went away and you erased the words on a blackboard, let's say, or on a whiteboard, there's still always a latent image. And if you focus long enough, you can actually bring that image forward again. So this was the pattern we were into. So we found that if we were to erase this emotional energy, this frequency that they have carried on inside of them, and then rewrite over top of it with proclamations, then this ended up being the defining point of actually feeling the benefit of a solid result that worked. And as an example, an affirmation is basically a wish for something you don't yet have. And a proclamation is a statement of fact. It's something that's already is, a truth about you. So it's true that we could say to you and to your audience, it's true that you're good.
You're good.
It's true that you're loved. It's true you're kind. It's true that you are compassionate. And I am good, I'm wise, I'm all these things. But oftentimes we never spend enough time actually focusing on the good about ourselves. Our brain is too busy telling stories of all these things from the past that happened to us, where we think that we're defective in some way, that there's something wrong with us.
So as you are doing the tapping and stimulating your physical brain, you are also speaking positive words to yourself and about yourself. So it's a psychosomatic practice of rewiring your consciousness with intention. And it sounds like then also integrating kind of in real time with the practice and anchoring in that new awareness of something more positive in a lighter space where you cleared the denser energy from the that the trauma was holding on to.
Yes, precisely. And I like the fact that you said in real time, because TRT works specifically in the moment, in real time. So the way we look at it is that TRT is like you creating a self miracle. It is literally the power within your hands to rewire and rewrite your own personal story. It finally means that there's nothing you need and nobody has to help you but yourself, as long as you just know the simple little route to take yourself there. And we'll happily show you. We'll take you through and show you. So because sometimes it's just better just to experience something and do it. But I like to compare TRT, like I said, to a inner self miracle, because you're accomplishing something that otherwise you could not do, and it's easy.
Yeah, simple. It's very simple and it's soothing, right? The tapping, we know that we can use tapping to kind of regulate and calm the vagus nerve, and you're working with the nervous system in that process to really, and from my understanding, it works in real time because you are grounding into your body. You're coming back into the moment by tapping on your physical being.
You're literally making the statement, I matter, I'm important. You're saying to your body, hold up. Something important is happening right now. I am worthy of this moment. And that's why the I am proclamations are also important at the very end, because the release takes you through. It, it, it allows you to have every emotion, every sensation, and to never feel afraid of them anymore. So there's no need anymore to hide things from yourself, because it's actually to your advantage to be honest about it and just simply to release it. We use it in our relationship all the time. So, for example, if we're having a difficult moment and we're having tension with each other, we tap and we release that tension. And little by little, we're able to see each other again and to come back to that loving pathway.
Yeah.
So this tool can be used in so many ways. Not to mention, but I will. Funny saying, pain relief, just simple pain relief.
Which was the experience that when you shared it with Scarlett, she was having a headache.
Exactly. Yeah. And what better time than in that moment just do the technique and then just show her how simple it is to actually regulate her own body. Because we often feel and believe that we have to reach for outside sources. Like, I need that Advil, or I need something to make me feel better. But the reality is oftentimes that we're just this tension we're feeling, and all we actually need to do is just to calm ourselves down. And as soon as we do that, within just a few moments, we're getting better.
There is a science behind tapping on the body and tapping on meridian points. It's been around for 5,000 years. It's called acupuncture and acupressure. And what they found with tapping with EFT and TRT, what we're doing, is it lowers cortisol levels in your body by 25% within seconds. And also it starts to boost up all those good feeling ones like dopamine, serotonin. So all these beautiful hormones start coming up into the body, and it starts to flood the body. Your natural painkillers.
Yes.
So you now have a natural painkiller flowing through your body. So it's great for reducing pain.
So it seems that the more you utilize the technique, then the more powerful the technique becomes, as your body would understand. Like, let's say I'm in a stressful moment with my kids and I'm feeling that overwhelm come. And as you were saying earlier, that oftentimes our self-care work is just sort of venting a little bit. But with tapping, you're anchoring in, and so really releasing, but also training your body that when you are in this moment of overwhelm or frustration or stress or whatever it is, and you're going to resort to your technique, your body, like, just like you did with Charlie, you put his vest on and he's like, okay, I'm in work mode now. And then you would do the same. Your body knows I'm tapping. Okay, I'm going to start releasing these chemicals and then find myself in a peaceful place where I can now navigate the moment that I'm in.
Well, it's very much building a trust relationship with your body, because what you're basically doing is you're giving your body not even a conversation, you're giving your body the experience of your undivided attention for a whole 60 seconds, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's actually TRT, the tapping, the trauma release technique that really allows us to do that, because it's those specific combination of words and the tapping points that finally just set everything free.
Absolutely. If I could add to what you were saying there also, Megan, is because you use something as in fermenting, as in there's something inside of you stewing and bringing these emotions up in the first place. And this is the part where most people don't understand what is actually happening. We all agree, and I'm sure your audience agrees, we create our own reality. True? And then when you ask somebody, how do you create your own reality? Their answer be,
Mine or most people's.
let's try yours right now.
I believe that we create our own reality through the lens, our mindset perspective. I can walk into your home and the way that you greet me will come through my own perspective, which means I'm going to perceive you through my own experience and my own lens inside of my own internal world, which may not actually match what your external, the way you are presenting and connecting to me. And so for me and my understanding, I create my own reality through my perception.
Very good.
Definitely a part of it is definitely that is it.
Now, if we could
Get deeper. Let's go.
We'll keep going.
yeah, let's just build on this a little bit. Imagine, if you will, and I'm sure you're aware that everything is frequency, everything is energy. So we know that emotions have particular frequencies. They operate, so say anger operates at 14 hertz of the body. So we know these things. So the challenge with our mind is our mind thinks so many thoughts. We think 30 thoughts a second. It's hard to use your mind to try and figure out why things are happening to you in your life. So everything in here is on automatic. So if you are feeling a particular way, you're broadcasting out a signal. And this is the signal that greets you at the door as you walk in. This is how we feel each other.
Yes.
And this signal is broadcast out, and your internal guidance system, I point to the stomach and to the child within, because this is what happens. There is an innocence and purity to this, that it does not discern between right or wrong, good or bad. It just says, oh, you want to feel more of this. The challenge with this is that many of the frequencies you're giving off, many of this energy that is attracting other things into you has been given to you by somebody else.
Yes.
It's not yours. It's something that happened to you earlier on in lifetime. So if we can take that energy, that frequency, and we can release it, then all of a sudden we stop creating from here. And the amazing part is you stop having these things where, yes, I believe I create my own reality, but why does this keep on happening to me?
Yes.
So we semi-believe we create our own reality. Yes, I create my own reality. I didn't create that, and I didn't create that. But yes, you did. Fear attracts. And so we're on this path of learning how to release fear, how to let go of these things and move ourselves and our life into a more proactive, if you will, creative reality where we are getting the things we want. We are lining up much faster with the things we want rather than the things that we think we are from before.
Yes.
So for an example, just a quick example, and then I'll turn it back over to my lovely colleague, just for a quick example on this. Is there, and ask everybody in your audience, ask yourself this question right now. This is just a yes or no, no details. We don't need to know anything. This is a simple question. Is there an emotional event in your life that when you think of it now, you can still feel your emotions come up? True, and true for everybody. We're sure of this. Now, that emotion that's coming up, if you could describe the emotion, what's the emotion you're feeling when you think of that event for you? Anxiety. So that anxiety that you're creating, and let's just give the event a name. Let's just call it your 7 event. Okay, so that anxiety you felt at that 7 event, and when you think of it now, you're still broadcasting that out. So what are you going to do? You're going to create things into your situation. You're going to bring it to things in your life where it's going to make you anxious. Now, anxiety is fear.
Yes.
So as we start to dispel the fear and the anxiety from that 7 event, then all of a sudden everything else dissipates.
So now we go back to, okay, creating your own reality, because so what's happened now is that after the sequence of tapping, that active portion of you that was emitting that signal is now quieted down. How do we know? Because you said, I feel her. She's in with me, and you actually pulled your energy in towards you. So you can see you've already begun to pull that portion of yourself in. So that means that the energy radiating out of your body now, radiating out, is different.
Yes.
So you're now in this very moment creating a new reality base. And you had mentioned earlier about our thoughts. And it's very important to know what our thoughts are. But isn't it a good thing we're not actually creating exclusively through thoughts?
Gosh, yes.
Because if we were creating exclusively through thoughts, we were talking about alligators earlier. It'd be a much different world. Yeah, there'd be alligators running all over the place. But so that is a blessing of we create our own reality. We do. We create through that feeling, but it's not just like the emotions I'm able to generate when I'm conscious of it because I'm trying to create something, as a lot of people do when they're literally trying to create something in their life. But it's about changing the literal atmosphere of the inner body so that what's emitting out, the signal that's coming out, is pure and peaceful and loving. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter beyond that. If your signal is pure, peaceful, and loving, let's just say just those three things, you're going to be lining up with all the wonderful things in your life. And how do you know? Because they're going to be peaceful, they're going to be filled with loving people, and it's going to feel good to you. What more do we want, right?
That's one of the things that I was just so captured by your technique when you first shared it with me, because in my own experience of trying to figure out what does it even mean to heal? What does it mean to love myself? And actually asking myself these questions, and coming from a very traumatic childhood and then moving through into adulthood that was traumatic in its own different ways, I experienced in my own life the concrete fact that we carry trauma in our bodies. I had sexual abuse trauma as a child that manifests decades later as disease in my body, which I dealt with for many, many years, and ultimately had to have surgery, which then led to an embolism as a complication of the surgery. And so life really taught me this very, very abruptly and in my face. And like, you cannot deny this is the reality of the fact that you are an energetic being manifest as physical. And I've spent years studying the physical body. My passion is nutrition and wellness, and learning how to really nurture my body, like with top of the line fuel and fluids and all of the things that the same way we take care of material objects that need maintenance. And in that process, I also really allowed myself to transform my faith. And when I stepped back from everything that I had been given to me throughout my life, like you said, is we really have to be very intentional and conscientious of what is truly ours and what is conditioning that we've received. And after my embolism, and without going too deeply into it, I made a promise to myself in the hospital bed. I said, if I do come home, I will just, whatever decisions, whatever actions, whatever has to be done. I laid in that bed and I thought, I'm not happy enough to die. And I promised myself that no matter what it took, I would make the choice that was going to lead me to a place that the next time I faced my mortality, I would be happy enough to die. And it wasn't as much a fear of dying as it was that in that moment of looking at it, I felt like I'd wasted my life. I felt like I really never got the opportunity to live because I continued to live stuck in the past. Even though I wasn't the type of person to mentally ruminate, I existed physically. I resonated in the frequency of fear. And later down the road during my journey, I came to understand that there are only two emotions. There's fear and there's love, and everything else is a derivative of one or the other. And so I've used that as my own metric of how I'm feeling about things. And everything that you have taught me already and you're sharing today has resonated so deeply with me because I've experienced not with your technique, but I love that your technique can takes all of this and concentrates it into an actual practice that we can be intentional with. And it means so much to me that you're sharing this with us today because this is the message that I feel so inspired is that we have nothing to heal from. Our lives and our experiences, no matter how traumatic they may be, are the perfect experiences for us. We have to exist in them. And it's just a matter of being and of accepting ourselves in our being. And so when we get the opportunity to share space with like-minded people who also understand these things, it got me so excited to hear more because I know that you two have spent your own lives having your own journeys and you've had your own similar but different experiences that have led you here. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about who was Danny and who was Kaw before you ended up traveling the world and about.
As I'm listening to you talk, I'm kind of formulating the pathway, and I realized that probably the easiest way to describe myself would be because I could talk to you about the fact that as a Pilates instructor for many years, so like you, I had a very physical relationship with my body that led me to this. It was as though the physical body literally told me after some time, I'm sorry, but I can only go so far unless you're willing to go off the mat and into a different position. And so I began to look in a more spiritual direction. So that was always a big part of it. I'm a writer at heart. I've been writing my whole life. And I believe that has to be kind of woven into the story. But I'm going to start in an unlikely place. And only because we're in a spiritual environment here. We're very spiritual people. So I'm going to start here. In 2019, I went back to Poland for the first time since 1981. My family immigrated here in 1981, and that was the first time that I actually had a chance to go back. It was a very important time for me because it was also the first time that I had the opportunity to go back to where I had the car accident. I was hit by a truck when I was a little girl, and it was a nearly life-ending experience for me. However, here I am. So it was a miracle at that time that I was able to be here. But when I was underneath the truck, I remember distinctly to this day hearing a voice, which I at that time thought was God, that said to me, you're going to have 3 daughters, you're going to write a book, and you're going to meet the love of your life. And it was those things that kept me going my entire life. So if I were to not say that part, then you'd be missing the best part of the story. Because when Danny finally did come to my door, he came to my door. All I had to do was be still and build it. And it's funny because I was building a home studio and I kept hearing this message, if you build it, he will come. And in my mind, I kept saying, it means my students are coming. My students are coming. And that's how I kept motivating myself. And so I got a phone call one day, and the day the studio was finished, the ladder was still standing where I'd paint was still wet. And the phone rang, and a friend said, I have, can we come over for some acro yoga with a friend? And I thought, oh, 2 lovely ladies are going to come over. I never anticipated that I'd open the door that day and this man would be there. And that tapping, that this technique that we're talking about today would change my life. That these two things together would change my life. So that is my story in a sort of, in that circular way. that we talk, and it's all related. And if I didn't tap, I wouldn't have been able to go back to 2019 to Poland and to stand in that spot and to say those words to myself. Because in 2019, I realized that the voice I heard underneath the truck was my voice. Who else? Who else could have known my details? Who else could have told me the things that I needed to hear that could keep me going through what I had to go through over the next months and years of rehabilitation and pain and all the different things I had to go through. So Danny is my rock. He's my love. There is only him for me. And tapping TRT the way it is now, that because it was it birthed, did not start out that way, but it is now that way, is the thing we have created. And the way we've used it and the way we offer it is the way is our heart basically on the sleeve of the world.
I love it. I love it so much. And I just have to say that I can see how much you love Danny in your eyes every time. The way you two look at each other is just one of the sweetest, most gentle things I've ever seen. And y'all are like obsessed with each other.
That is true.
And I love this man more and more every day.
Well, I've only known you for a few months, but I feel like I can see it in your face more every day. And I love that you two also have such positive things to say about one another, which I feel like oftentimes in relationships, we can have a tendency to allow our partner. What was it you said earlier, Danny? Is that those around us are going to process the emotions we don't process.
Yeah.
And so often in partnership, we push over those unprocessed emotions onto our partner. And because the emotions we want to get rid of are the negative ones, we push that negativity at our partner and oftentimes personalizing it.
And we had done that. We'd both done that in our relationships in the past, which is why we knew we could not do it this time. So we early on had a whole different set of rules for each other. And on that table was, along with no holding chalkboards, was to no longer behave the way we behaved in other relationships because we saw the results. Exactly. It was pretty obvious it didn't work. So why do that and jeopardize what we have?
I love that. It's very intentional and thoughtful. And I hope that more of us can enter a relationship from that perspective of going, I'm not going to expect you to be what I have left in the past. I am going to intentionally build with you what I want in my future.
Yes.
I believe it comes down to being impeccable with your word also. So if you say, you make a proclamation of the way you want to be in life, you're making a choice. Now, be impeccable with your word. Be a person that says, now that I have made this decision to become more, now that I've made this decision to say no more chalk marks, now that I've made this decision to say, I'm never going to be angry with you again, I will learn how to still myself in my own anger. And that was a big one.
Oh, yeah.
Because we found there are certain ways of dealing with emotions, but one way is, and of course, Cash and I both have our separate ways of dealing with emotions, but one way that works for me, and I don't know, maybe it's just a masculine viewpoint on this, or maybe it works with everybody, I'm not sure. But it was this, and this was a big one for me. And it was, in anger, the key to managing anger is to become still. Become completely still. Do not say anything. Do not move. Allow yourself to feel the emotion and let it pass through. And then we say afterwards, tap like a monkey. And the other one is in sadness, because depression and sadness are the other states of being that we get into. We find fear. Fear comes from the same center of our body where love is. Love is in the heart. Fear is in the thighs. It's right there. Love or fear. Love or fear. Like you said, every decision, that's what you're making. When we jump up in our head, we jump up into anger, which is right here in our throat chakra, which is in our thyroid. And we'll say you're all up in your head. You're all up in your head. We exhaust ourselves, and where do we drop? Because we're afraid to face our fear. We beat ourselves up enough we can't look at love. We drop right to the child within. And as we drop into sadness and depression, the body feeling depleted, saying, I can't do this again. This is hurting. This is disease. This is what it feels like. And in sadness, we become still. So the key about sadness, depression is move.
Mm.
Do something. Do something loving for something.
Pet a cat.
Give somebody a back rub. Just do anything but sit in it.
Yeah.
And so this is part of managing emotion. So like with our feeling path experience we do with people, this is part of it. Teaching people how to manage the emotions you're having, because we've all become so volatile in our own emotions.
Well, and I think too that so many people just don't even understand that. I love the way that you just illustrated that pathway that we travel that we are so disconnected from.
Yes.
More often than not, we're not even capable of identifying the emotion or connecting it to a source, either external or internal. But then to go another step further and to understand the sequence of it. And in my mind, I don't know why I'm thinking of this right now, but I think of the life cycle where the end of the life cycle, the decay process goes through different, you have the environmental factors, you have scavengers and things that start to reduce whatever it is that's decaying, and then you have bacteria that comes in. When the bacteria's done its work, it moves deeper into mold, and then at the end fungus comes in, and all of these things which we kind of look at as like they're gross and they're bad, and we certainly don't want them in our bodies most of the time, and they're such a necessary part. I don't know why my brain made that connection, but as we travel through these emotion pathways, I think so often we avoid them because we don't want to look at the decay. We don't want to deal with the festering growth of whatever those emotions are harboring.
And that makes sense, because if you don't have some way to actually release what you're feeling, then of course avoidance is a reasonable option, right? Because who really wants to be in that kind of state? That's why this technique is so wonderful, and you can tell we're very excited about it.
I'm excited about it
because it works on such a profound level, and it's so simple. And one of the things that is often difficult to circumvent is our subconscious programming.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you even said, like, I'm not sure why I chose this thought. That's subconscious.
Yeah.
That's your subconscious mind going, oh, no. So the wonderful thing about this technique, TRT, is that you can decide consciously exactly what you want to release. So what happens is you become very aware of yourself. You become very observant as to how you're behaving, what your reactions are like, what your responses are like. And you start to kind of cherry pick and decide, well, okay, I like this. I kind of would like to change that. And anything you want to change, just simply tap and release. And I always use the example, you're standing at the sink and you're washing the dishes, and all of a sudden a thought comes into your mind. So we would say in that moment, just turn off the water and take that 60 seconds. And in that moment, clean your inner self up. And what that does is that you don't have to worry about how am I going to get into these bigger things, or how am I going to release this bigger pattern, because what's going to happen is that every single time you catch that little one that you think is so inconsequential, suddenly your psyche will take you right to that big one. And you're going, oh my God. And all you have to do then is just continue the pattern, continue that cycle. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I love it. And again, it's one of the reasons that I'm so excited about the work that you do, because there's such a huge call towards healing. Everyone, I think in the last decade or so, we've become aware of what trauma is and how we experience different things as trauma. And now everybody's like, okay, I gotta heal. And I think we touched on this earlier, Danny, is we heal, but then for a decade, nobody's really said, what happens afterwards? what are you and who are you when you've healed? Because if you are a being made of your conditioning.
May I do this one?
Yes. And remember to share your story too.
Yeah, we gotta. Sorry, we derailed a little bit. But
It's all right because
yeah, exactly.
it's because the story is ongoing, and the story really doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't have a middle. It's ongoing all the time. But I believe this, and Kaw and I came across this years ago when in the synchronicities that everything happens. We had gone to this town. I had a contract with libraries. I was fixing some lithographic equipment for them, and this lady walked up, and she's got a library suit on, and she's got this beautiful white hair, and she takes this periodical, this magazine, and she sits it down on the table in front of the Kaw, slides it over to her and puts a smile on her face, and then walked away. And I said, something's not right here. And she goes, why? I said, I says, why? And I said, because this table and all the library staff know this table is supposed to be kept clean. This is a study table. Nobody's allowed to put anything on it. So we said, well, there must be something in here that we're supposed to see. So as we leaped through this periodical and broke the pages, it just jumped right out. There was an article in there. There was a biography written by one of Isaac Newton's students. And it was a whole different portrayal of Isaac Newton than we'd ever heard. Like, the guy who we assume had the Adam and Eve apple hit him on the head and discovered gravity. Like, come on. That was something else there. Maybe we won't even go down that. But one thing that he did say is he said that he thought it was such a great travesty that we'd taken God out of everything and put it into a man and started worshiping a man. And he said, whereas God is in everything, and this is the sensorium of God. This is where God comes to feel itself. Because in truth, you really don't know something until you've experienced it. Otherwise, it's just an opinion. It's just a perspective. But you truly do not know something until you've experienced it. So, for God to experience itself, it manifests physically, you and all of us, as a unique expression of itself. So, what are we doing here? We are here to forget who we are, that we're God, that we are creators of our reality. When we say, I believe I create my own reality, you are saying, I believe I'm creator. Very profound, right?
Absolutely.
And so if I am the creator, then what is my purpose here? Well, it's here for the experience. But then what would make that experience the richest experience I could possibly have as a creator? Oh, completely forget that I'm the creator. Completely forget that I'm creator. Give myself all these trials and tribulations so that eventually I could find my way out. I could rediscover the fact that I am good. I am love. I am kindness. I am compassion. I am the creator of my reality. I am guided and protected. I am safe. There is nothing for me to fear. Fear is just an expectation. It is nothing else.
You had made a very good point. There's only two things, love and fear. Ultimately, there's only one thing. There's only love. Because if fear was the only thing, then fear would eliminate. If evil was the only thing, it would quickly eliminate all good from the world. So we know for a fact that obviously good must be the foundation of what is here, because only good would allow evil to still exist.
Which is why fear is an illusion.
Exactly. It's a gift. It's the opposite of the good that we are. So it's our ability to actually have this moment. It's our ability for me to be me and for you to be you. For us to have this apparent separation when we actually know at the very heart of things we are one. We're only one being. Here's you, here's me, here's Danny, here's Zach, here's everybody else. Yeah. We're all part of the same thing. But the magic, the gift, is this illusion of separation. The gift is that we forget that we are all one. These are all gifts. We've just forgotten. We've forgotten that these are gifts, and we get upset now at the gift.
Yeah. No, I love that you go into this perspective because, as you mentioned, we are very spiritually perspective people. And I think a lot of times people become offended by this audacity to believe that you are God. and that you are the creator, because biblically, God is a man. It's this external entity of being outside of ourselves. When we start to come close to the concept that we individually and collectively are the creator, that is where that gift of fear comes in. And I think that so many people are turned away from that concept because the responsibility that comes with that. And then there's also the space where there's this understanding of the oneness, that you're a drop of God, I'm a drop of God, we're all perspective of God, like the fractals of light. And that's enough. I am the creator. I've done all of this and you're just projections from me. But that's still a space of the ego where we have to step outside of that one more time and go, if I'm God, then you're God. And that's the space where only love can exist. Because if I created this and I peel back all the layers and all the density and all the frequency to this oneness, you're there too.
Absolutely. And if I could speak to that, yeah. Because it's so profound what you're saying. And this is where physicality is really to our advantage. Because I'm real and I exist. And yet we know at the energetic level, at that very back foundational level, we are that one. But if we live in a divine dichotomy where two separate truths exist, one is that we're all one, and one is that we're all unique and individual. And in fact, we actually each one of us began at a specific point in time. So you are unique unto yourself right here now in this time, but you go back to wherever your first life was. And that truly is the fullness of you. So if you were to truly sort of measure yourself in terms of like, okay, who am I? Then you are that allness, that all that is. Yes, you are. But then you are this Megan, this one who has been many times and who is the full compilation of that self who sits now before me, before us.
So welcome to the new tribe. If you are watching on the video format today, then you will see a little bit of jumping around, as this is our second attempt at finishing this conversation. We went to visit Danny and Kaw in their house, which is their beautifully converted bus to a home. And unfortunately, being kind of out in the woods and under cloud coverage, the internet was not working with us so well. So we brought it on home.
And I've always been Danny.
Yeah.
Tribe of Dan.
It's true.
That's interesting.
It's like his name has been consistent. I, on the other hand, have had many, many different names. But
how do you uncover this information? Do you do past life regressions or? Okay.
if I may, the path that Danny and I took, so the healing that we created through the tapping that we did and continue to do, naturally release those memories, because the memories are inside me as a side effect of the experiences I've had. So, and that includes all the different lifetimes I've had from the very first time I became physical. And each one of us has that ability to feel who we are right to the first time we were physical. And that actually is a true foundation of your memory bank. So you have access to all of that. But if you have a lot of trauma in your life, especially in your childhood, then it causes compression in the frontal lobe, particularly, which oftentimes results in not being able to remember. But as soon as you start to heal that, as soon as you start to heal the trauma, memories just start to surface naturally. So I remember.
That's amazing.
And it's true. Saying is because you do start to remember your other incarnations that you've come into. And it throws you back a little bit because things just seem strangely familiar. And you go, wow, that's interesting. Then all of a sudden you start having memories of inside these buildings or particular people, or you have visions that you know have never been from any movie you've ever seen or anything you could ever possibly imagine. And it's just all of a sudden, there's this image, this vision in your eyes. And it's quite remarkable because as you go through these different things, you start to realize how long you've been here. You've been here very long.
A long time.
We keep saying we're eternal. Well, it's about time that we kind of embrace that fact that we are eternal. And we keep coming in and having more lives and more lives and more lives. And each one we go, yeah, this time I'm going to try it this way. Yeah, this time I'm going to try it that way. And so we give ourselves all these different things to go through. But ultimately, we're always trying to find our way back to who we are. Just remember who we are.
That's a fact.
So I have a question. I'm very curious about your perspectives. Is from the perspective of we are eternal beings, how does that fit into the first physical embodiment?
Probably the most comfortably, to be
Okay.
honest with you, because that first embodiment would be the closest to that knowing of all that is. So, have an image. Think of it this way. It's like there's all this infinite sky with stars, and all of a sudden the masculine and the feminine just roll out of that as though they're rolling out from underneath a blanket. And it's already in that loving embrace because it was God's desire to be not alone, which it could not actually do unless it split itself up and birthed that whole desire to be something. So if it all started from love, then everything else makes sense.
I love that. I always kind of ponder on that concept that is, we always have been, we always will be, we are. But there has to be some spark, some moment, yes, the beginning. And so our beginning would be just a transition in God's own experience. Okay.
Exactly.
There's a wonderful book coming out called At the End of Fear. And as the very first chapter is the very explanation here.
Yeah.
You're looking.
So that's Dan.
Is the author in this book?
This is Danny's new book coming out, At the End of Fear.
Yes.
Yeah, we're very excited about that. We actually both have books coming out at this time, but this one in particular, Danny does a beautiful job of explaining his perception of that initial beginning.
From a vision. So it was the actual vision that I started to speak from, and it was quite remarkable actually to have this experience. I can share it if you wish. It was basically this. It was actually about, we'll call it being in the void. So there was just nothingness, right? There was no thing. There was no emotion. There was just this being, this sense, this being. And I remember it was like being asleep. And then it was all of a sudden, it was like a flash. And then it was like being awake and seeing all this beauty and color rushing towards me, and all these beautiful sparkles of light that were rushing towards me, rushing past me. And then in that I saw this blue light. And so this blue light, and that's the one that captured my interest. That was this blue light that was swirling around. And I can remember feeling interested. And then from there, it just seemed like we went from, and I had this sense of I all of a sudden, like I and that, and I and that, I and that. And so I remember thinking that there was more now than just one of me. But the first thing that I felt in there was just the awe of beauty. And then all of a sudden it was everything. Everything was here all at the same time.
So no
whole realm. Everything was here.
So like nowhere, now here. That's on the back of my book.
But let's get into the topic of your tapping technique that you have developed, which I find so fascinating. And I want to share it with our audience because it is such a profound but simple technique to use in any moment that you're dealing with I'll let you take over the explanation of it.
At any moment you have a sensation in your body that you don't prefer, a thought that you would like to take care of, anything in your experience that you would like to change to make it something different. The bottom line is that TRT, trauma release technique, gives you the ability to catch yourself in real time. It actually encourages you and inspires within you a practice of self-observation. So you become really, really in tune with yourself and what you're feeling, what you're going through, what you're thinking. It gives you the ability to circumvent or change the pathway of that action. So for example, if you have a pain in your body, you can eliminate that pain. It's like we like to call it sometimes better than an Advil.
Oh, absolutely. It's the ultimate pain
The
relief.
ultimate pain release.
The foundation of what we do is the tapping that Kaw's talking about. The foundation we do was built from Gary Craig's emotional freedom technique, which is EFT.
And we're very grateful to
We're very, very grateful.
create that amazing foundation for us. 'Cause that was the solid stepping stones that we built TRT on.
Absolutely. And what we found with EFT is a fantastic tool for finding relief in the moment. So relieving pain, relieving stress, relieving anxiety. However, for the work that we were doing and the people that we were working with, because we work with a lot of heavily traumatized people, PTSD, sexual assault cases, and that we found that the relief wasn't enough. It was like taking the pressure cooker on the stove and then just releasing the valve is what EFT was doing, and we needed to shut off the stove. So through our work, we ended up discovering that by using more of the tapping points than what was currently being used in EFT, and by changing the structure of the verbiage within it, we could actually get in deeper. We could shift the subconscious, and we could release traumatic events from the past. So in essence, PTSD is reversible.
Mm-hmm.
It is reversible. It is not something that we have to live with. It is not anything that has to be debilitating. Now, once again, I just want to say this. As always, it's a person's choice.
Mm-hmm.
If a person chooses to stay in those states, then that's fine. And even in that, we can still bring people that are in those states, we can still bring them into a state of relief.
And sometimes as simple as just acknowledging, because we are at the base, one, acknowledging that if we shift, so if we see somebody suffering with something and we shift the energy in ourselves by doing a TRT sequence, we in that way passively, because we don't want to push somebody into anything at all, but we passively clear that energy because we're clearing it ourselves, therefore acknowledging that oneness, that one unit of all of us. So in that way, you can help your relatives, for example. So if you have a active tapping practice, and you have, let's say, because a lot of people find themselves very spiritual, but disconnected from their family, tapping can be the bridge to bring them in. Because as you release whatever it is that you feel that they're causing in you, you're opening up the space between you and that person. And on your side of the door is a loving, open, receptive nature. And no matter where they land in their resistance to you, it doesn't matter, because you just keep tapping and releasing whatever they present at the door. And eventually they're able to step through. And so what it does is it creates a unity with people in a very gentle, non-pushy way, which is really important as we're all becoming more telepathic with each other. Mm-hmm. Because as we become more telepathic in real time with each other, all of the emotions we perceive to be private, in actuality, are being pushed out to those around us. Mm-hmm. Generally, it's the people closest to us that feel the most from the boom from that. But really, it extends to everybody. There's no distance between any of us, because ultimately it always goes back to the same thing. We're all one. Mm-hmm. So with that always in mind, this practice can be a powerful ally.
I believe in the essence of you understanding that we are all connected and that we are all one. The Hawaiians had a great modality. They called it Ho'oponopono. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. But it was a Hawaiian spiritual prayer, basically saying, I heal in me what I see in you. Mm-hmm. So that shows the connectedness of us all. So as we heal ourselves, we shift the world around us. So you never have to change the whole world. You only ever have to change you in the world.
Absolutely.
So if I'm a person that lives in stress, or I'm a person that lives in fear, or I'm a person that lives in anger, and I shift myself, then I shift all the energy around me and everybody that comes into connection with me. And so you start to see your world changes rapidly. So we often say we're all going to the new world basically through our human evolution. The truth of the matter is it's already here. We just have to release what we're carrying around and step into the new world, step into that new bit of unity and compassion and love that we already are. We're already there. We just have to let the rest of it go. It's kind of like take the training wheels off our bike and just be brave and let it go.
Part for so many of us, because what we have to let go are the conditionings that we've received that we assume as our identity. And so if I don't let go of this identity as X, Y, or Z, who am I? What am I? And as I've walked my own spiritual path and healing and coming through my own complex traumas, I am the type that I always need to know why. I need to know why something is, why it works, how it works, all of the information. And as I intuitively came to begin to understand what you're referring to as the oneness and the connectedness, I wanted to understand why. So I love to turn to science for this. And mainstream science for many years just kind of shrugs their shoulders when you get to those types of questions. But in the quantum field, we know that on that just tiniest anatomical level, that we all exist in a field of energy which is connected. We know that there's no matter. We know that there's no density. We know that there's no separation. Science knows this and says this. There's nothing between us. And so I love that there's an actual explanation for what you're tapping into, that energetic field, and tuning your own frequency, the resonance that you're vibrating within, and therefore you see that come back to you as you're connecting, you're seeing it reflected back in your external world, such as with relatives or other people in our lives and our environment and experience.
And it's interesting because you made a statement about being afraid that without this character, who am I? And it's interesting because your character is your limitation.
Yeah.
And it's when we step into that unlimited self that what is the vision of that going to look like? And I don't know, but I know this, it feels exciting. It feels like, wow, I'm going to create from love from now on. I'm not no longer going to create from anger. I'm not going to create from fight or fear or any of those other emotions that have kept us in this loop for millennia after millennia, just fighting and killing and fighting and killing and anger, and we've got so lost in ourselves. We've completely and thoroughly forgotten who we are. Well, now in this time of this great awakening, this remembering who we are, remembering that we are the creator of our reality, hence you are the creator, then that must mean now that as I remember that I am good and I am loving and I am kind, what am I going to create from this point? And I will say this, the other world will keep on remaining in because there are people that want to feel those emotions. There are people that want to experience that. It would be like going to the theme park. And some people say, hey, I want to go on that roller coaster over there. And the rest of us go, no, thank you. and so it's like that. Or we can say, I want to eat that food at the buffet. And others would say, no, I don't want that food.
And the wonderful thing about the practice that we do is that it takes away, it eliminates the fear. Because you just start to do it on a day-to-day basis on all the little things that don't seem so important. it will naturally take you to those bigger places. And then your transition from one self to the new self will be much more gradual, much more comfortable, much more easy, and deeply more satisfying. Now, some of us like to do the big effect. So we like to, like a traumatic event that pushes us to make changes.
Sure.
But what TRT offers is a gradual movement into those same states. So you can have a big event. We had a friend, her house got hit by lightning, but things worked out for her really well. You know, so sometimes we have big things happen to us that we can feel the energies growing on, but we allow it to happen because it shifts us so profoundly. We don't mind the mess in the meantime.
Yeah.
I enjoy in my life things being gentle and satisfying and nice, and I've been working diligently to move myself out of a mainly negative state into a more positive state. I think Danny can attest to that. So,
Absolutely.
So it's been a conscious, deliberate effort to feel the way I feel internally. It hasn't always been an easy uphill climb, but it has been a steady uphill movement, which takes out the fear.
And in all fairness, what Kaw's talking about with her emotions it was because of the level of her trauma. It was because of things that had happened to her at a very young age that you see that it built this character of being afraid and having these different components inside of her, these different emotions inside of her that made it a challenge to work through. Now, I say a challenge to work through only in the fact that it took a little bit of time, that's all. But I've noticed this about Kaw. She has been remarkable through this whole process of tapping and releasing and always being the observer of her own behavior and being the observer of the emotions and sensations that are inside of her body. And she's always the first one to step up and start tapping and releasing them. And I honor her for that. I still have challenges every now and then with a few emotions. We won't get into them here,
but but you know what, Danny? The bottom line is, without his consistency at the beginning of a relationship when I felt very unstable and uncertain, because for the first year when we got together, Danny was so sweet because I was very insecure. I didn't believe, I kind of had this feeling inside me that if I did it by myself, for myself, it wouldn't work. So Danny would take my hand and he would hold my hand and he would tap on the side of my hand and he would tap on my arm and he would tap on the side of my head. And it became it's very beautiful love language between us. And we did that for
very intimate. Yeah.
Very intimate. I would say probably for the first year of a relationship, or less than a year.
A little bit more than a year.
But then there came a time, and we'd been doing it enough, and so I had a good practice. But I was still leaning towards Danny to help me. So I was still creating this vulnerability inside myself, this feeling like I couldn't take care of myself emotionally. So one day Danny was not in the house. He had gone to some shopping, and I was by myself, and I was up against an emotion, and I got frustrated, and I said, enough. And I just tapped on myself. And at the end of that sequence, I felt this rush of relief and this satisfaction and this deep kind of feeling like, you mean this is what I've been holding back? This is what I've been... So since then, I've become probably the biggest
advocate for tapping you've ever seen. Yeah. She's our cheerleading.
I love that. Surprised me that I should have brought it with me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because it is that remarkable when you have these breakthroughs and you're the creator of your own breakthrough. You're the designer of it. You're the person that has allowed this to happen within you. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, for the first time, you get that sense of victory in yourself, this victory over a moment in your life that just prior to this was debilitating for you, that would put you down on the ground or put you into a state of depression for days at a time. Like I know that used to be mine was years ago. I used to go into these states of depression. I rode these high highs, and then I just plummet into these low lows. And then whenever I discovered that it was me that could bring myself out and bring myself back up into a state, then all of a sudden life started to get a lot smoother. Because there's one really, really interesting aspect about all this. You would think, because everybody's always telling us to be happy, find joy, do these, be in love, be all this. But I believe the one emotion that Kaw and I have found that seems to be the highest frequency you can hit is calm. Because in calm is clarity. Because in calm is a platform by which you can oversee every other emotion and you can step into wherever you want. So it's like stepping off and onto this invisible bridge of boom, now I'm into this emotion. I'm into feeling this particular way. I'm into feeling more joy. I'm feeling happiness. I'm making the conscious choice now, but it's always come from a state of calm. And I believe this is what um, tapping has shown us is that we have the ability to reach these states of calm where we're vibrating at such a high level. And we always say to people, calm down, but it's actually calm up.
Calm up.
Because when you calm up, you are actually raising your vibration into this beautiful state. And it's almost euphoric as you feel it, yes.
And from calm, everything else is easy. Excitement's easy from calm. Love is easy from calm. Even if you fall down into feeling off, it's easier to come up to calm than it's happy. Because happy seems like such an unreasonable expectation when we're not feeling it.
So I'm curious, how, in your perspective, do you delineate calm and peace? Because I feel that from my perspective, I always strive towards finding that internal center where I am at my peace, which would be calm, and navigating the different experiences, whatever comes up in life. And my work is to stay connected to that peaceful state, which, of course, depending on what it is more effort or not.
I just want to say one
But you got your hand up first. You get to go first this time.
I'll just like to simply calm is just like the working man's version of peace.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not really different.
Yeah.
It's the same frequency. It's just the way I believe we're looking at it.
Sure.
Calm feels like a more workable.
It's
a verb.
It's perspective.
It's more calm. I find it's more easy to achieve. When I look at peace, it feels so big sometimes, and it feels like I have to do certain things to be peaceful.
Yeah.
Calm feels like I can achieve it right now. See,
peace would suggest there's a war. So I'm trying to find my peace of the war going on within me. Calm would say, I found myself a place that I can go where I can rest and be calm. It doesn't matter what's going on in my outside world. It doesn't matter what's going on within. I can find my plateau of calm. You see? Just different perspectives. Yeah. Everything comes from a perspective.
Yeah. And we can get too caught up in the words and the verb and the things. So it's actually best sometimes to stay in the feeling.
Sure. Yeah. I can definitely agree with that. Okay, so Danny, going back to what you were talking about earlier about how our characters developed somewhat from the traumas that we experienced. And I can identify with that personally in a tremendous way. I was always the outspoken kid. I'm the second born, which there's oddly, I don't know if you've ever read into like birth order stuff. Oh, yeah. So, as the second born and the first daughter, I very much fit that role. And I've always been the most outspoken and kind of the black sheep of the family and took everything from under the rug and pulled it out. And so, even as a young child, I was always sort of the problem child. Even though I wasn't actually creating problems, I realize now in retrospect that I was pulling out problems I didn't even know were problems and putting them in front of everyone. And so I grew up with this sort of characterization that I was problematic, I was difficult, I was creating all of this turmoil. But that never, I couldn't understand it. I was so confused within myself because I was being treated this way. I was being, told these things. I was being identified, in third party conversation of, oh, Megan, this, that. I was being programmed. But my internal knowing and my understanding of myself and my awareness of what my intentions were, I struggled so much because I'm like, how can I be so disconnected from myself? how is it that I believe that I'm doing the right thing? I'm doing good things. I'm trying to be loving, but it's being like blown back at me always like, you're wrong, it's bad. And I spent so many years just struggling with that until much later in life when I did start to realize, oh, I was pulling things out and putting them in my mom's face that she was trying very hard to ignore and to put on her own blinders towards. And it definitely took me becoming a mother to be able to shift that perspective and realize, as a child, I'm like, why am I the bad guy all the time? But now I go, oh, I was the bad guy because that was like deep. I was like digging into some pretty deep wounds there, but unintentionally. So all of that to say, especially, during my teenage years and my younger years, I just kind of was like, well, if I'm the problem child, I might as well be the problem child. It's like eventually you kind of, if you're going to get slapped on the wrist so many times, you might as well do the crime, right? And even though I never got in any kind of trouble, it was an identity that I accepted about myself. I accepted that I brought problems out. I accepted that I was the instigator of turmoil or contention or whatever, even though in my heart I knew it wasn't true, but I was like, that's what is being reflected back to me. So that must be true. And I am the one that can't see it. I am the one, like, that's a problem with me. So it was like layers and layers of how I was bad. And I received those conditionings, which I assumed as my character until I go on this journey for myself and started to understand that. So when you're working with people and you can kind of trace this pattern with them, how do you go through that type of helping people to, do you try and even bring an awareness or you just clear it?
Well, both.
Okay.
Because the power is in the knowledge always.
Sure.
So let's say, for example, you go through three different brain phases, frequency shifts. So a child under 6 is on one brain frequency. That is their hypnagogic state, where they're just sitting there, just consuming. They also, at that age, have the greatest emotions because everything is big. And then from that 6 until about 10 or 11, they go through another shift in there. And in that is where they're just kind of acting out everything that they've seen or everything that's happened to them. And then by the time they hit 13 years of age, they go through that other shift, which we would call the adolescent brain. And in that, they start reflecting back on their own selves and judging themselves. So I'll let
this is a topic I'm actually quite passionate about.
Yeah.
Because the neurological shift of the children that they go through, that occurs to them, is so profound and so kind of not understood by people. So we so seldom actually look at a child's brain development in relationship to how they're behaving. Because, like, for example, when a little girl, oftentimes I'll just go from little girls to have $3. Danny has 4 sons, so we kind of specialize in our gender. But when a little girl goes through that shift, there's a day where she goes into a room and she's one person. And you see her that the next day come out and she's a completely different human being. And that is such a huge and profound shift. I know when my girls went through that, I took them aside, each one of them, and I had a conversation with them that day, and I invited them. I said to them that I recognized where they were at. I knew that what they were going through was really big. And I put it out in front of them that we could take a traditional route and we could be difficult with each other, or we could be loving with each other and have a really wonderful time as they went through that phase. Now, I was very blessed. My daughters are wonderful, and they all took a much more loving route. But a lot of parents, when their children go through that 13-year-old stage particularly, they take things personally when their child is actually preparing to make that huge leap out of the nest. And it's such a huge change. And if we could just remember back to our own time, how vulnerable we felt, but at the same time, how we felt like we knew it all. they need to have that feeling. We needed to have those feelings in order to be able to make that jump out into the world in what is really just a tiny little bit of time. It was 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years, as they're going. So, and Danny knows this about me. I get very passionate when it comes to that. I love children. I love working with children, and particularly this whole understanding of like where they're at. Like if parents understood that from 0 to I'm going to say 8, because I'm but 6, 7, 8, they're in a completely open hypnagogic state, which means that they're just taking things in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's not about what you say directly to them. It's actually how you interact with the world, because they're watching that.
Yep.
And so the words become later on the internal language they're saying to themselves on a subconscious level. But the actions of the family, how the family behaves, is going to be the way they unconsciously behave later on in life. Not the life they want to create, because they're going to have an idea in their mind based on their experience. Most likely something like, I don't want to do anything that looks like this, because most of us have that. I would create a life that looks totally different. But then somehow, inevitably, we end up recreating certain circumstances that are so similar to the ones we lived out in childhood, not because we want to, but because the unconscious part of our brain.
That's what we know.
That's been all those words we heard our parents saying. It wasn't about what you had said there earlier about, people were scripting you. That is so, so powerful. You literally can't fight that.
Yeah.
So you at that age, at a young age, you might see, you probably didn't even have the thought of like, that's not me at that age. That thought came later, as probably you're able to work that out. Because in the moment, most children, when they are given such a thing like that, most of us just kind of accept it. It goes in, it hurts, and it becomes part of our story, part of our character.
If I could too, I'd like to add in the physiological effects too that are happening to a child as a child's going through trauma in this part up to the age of 6 or 8 in there. When something happens in that child, they do not have the cognitive ability because they are, remember, they're in a different brain frequency altogether, just where they're absorbing information. So when something big happens, when something fearful happens, they do not have the cognitive ability to do fight, flight, or freeze. They can only do freeze. So when this event happens to them and they freeze in that event, for them to survive, they will bubble that off in their reality. So then they spend these next 6 years, let's say, after the event, just trying to contain and just move on the next day. When they start coming into that adolescent awareness, the I that they become whenever they're 13, they start to have this I statement. That's whenever they get all cocky with the parents and they know everything. I'm not saying that in a bad way, because we all go through that, but
it's necessary.
Yeah.
So, but when that happens is with the lack of understanding of survival mode and anxiety and its effects within the body, the physiological effects in the body, that 12, 13, 14-year-old then starts looking back and saying, stupid me. What was wrong with you? Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you run away? Why didn't you go tell your mom? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And so it ends up, you end up beating up you because of your lack of understanding that this child, this innocent child, had a physiological response to fear, to stress, and it froze, plain and simple. So the next part of the journey then, as people come into us in their adult life and to release them from those events, it's always a different part thing. First, we have to go in and apologize to the child for ever saying all these bad words. And then we have to deal with the young teenager, who's full of attitude and anger. And so angry, because what is anger? Anger is just a kick off of fear. And because they're so angry, then we have to deal with that portion of it. Because you'll see the events just keep recreating themselves. One fearful event creates another fearful event, creates another fearful event.
And the child will forget about the automatic bypass, about that bubble where there's protection around them. They don't understand why the next day they have a fear about something. You know what happens when a child has that happen where they have that traumatic event that creates that automatic bypass, they will suddenly be afraid of something dark in the corner or under the bed. And it seemed out of the blue. But if you actually could see the full events as they happened and understand, oh, this child just had a traumatic event and they've forgotten about it, so they can continue the next day and still be a child, because their brain is just not able to hold that information. The severity of what happened was too big and the body had to protect itself. But the only thing is that that creates tension. And that tension, as you move on in life, creates disease. So what the body does as a means of self-preservation, the body will send out signals to you that feel like pain, that feel like weird thoughts, that feel like repetitive patterns, that feel like things happening to you over and over, which are only just a traumatic event, literally pinging, saying, please look at me, please look at me, please. Can't keep holding this tension any longer.
Yes.
And so, like we had mentioned earlier about remembering past lives and going back and being able to remember, you had asked, what did we do, regression? And the answer is we don't need to, because when you heal the trauma of this current lifetime and you open up the brain, there's no more tension there, you will automatically ping back to the past as well, because there's most likely events in the past that actually cause some of the events you're having right now. So we're actually healing all the way through time.
I love that you put it that way, because that's something that I came to understand in my own experience. So I have always shared my own experiences very openly, because as I was navigating my own healing journey, it was really hard to really pinpoint myself in whatever it was that I was searching for, until I was able to connect with people who had shared experiences, or conceptually shared, maybe not an identical experience, but a similar pattern. They're having their own experience of the same wounding, right? The same trauma. And so I've always chosen to share very openly. So for me, I struggled with growing up in a violent, like my entire childhood was surrounded by violence, both the community that I lived in outside of the home and the home that I lived in. There was just always fear of safety. And that's something that I carry today. Like, that's something, I don't know how much work it'll take to really find peace in my sense of security, but I've come.
Because you're there right now, because I can feel you're there right now. You're right at that first event where you first saw that violence. Okay. What age were you then?
I don't know. In my first,
That first time where they scared the living bejesus out of you with this anger and rage that you were seeing.
I would say probably about 4.
So let's call it your 4 event.
Okay.
Because to a child, like, to say that this is on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be off the scale, because when a child first sees this, it is like it's gods are warring with each other, because the mother and the father,
They
the family
are the entire
unit
world.
is the entire world. That is your gods.
And you are in that open hypnagogic stage.
Yeah.
So brain does not have, you do not have the ability to protect yourself, even from the energy that's coming at you. So everything is intensified, everything's bigger. And that's actually why that automatic bypass, like that closing off and disremembering happens, the protective measures.
That resonates tremendously with me.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, you standing where you are right now, looking at that 4-year-old, how afraid were you? 10 being, if I think about this too much, I'm going to be right in there.
Probably a 10.
You're out of chance.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, because as you were building up to this question, you were actually going into it already, and we could already feel you in there. All right, so then let's just tap on the side of the hand.
Okay, so we're gonna go through the
Absolutely, we're gonna take you
tapping
through
technique now.
the tapping technique,
And this is TRT, trauma release technique, and that's actually why I'm here to do this.
and let's see what we can do with these numbers. Okay, so tap on the side of your hand and just repeat after us. Even though
Even though
I felt so afraid,
I felt so afraid,
not for it,
in that four event.
I deeply and completely
I deeply and completely
love and accept myself.
love and accept myself.
Even though
Even though
I feel so afraid
I feel so afraid
every time they yell.
Every time they yell.
I can forgive myself for that.
I can
I can
forgive
forgive
myself for
for
that.
that.
Even though I felt so afraid
Even though I felt so
and
afraid
so unsafe
and so unsafe
in that four event,
in that four event.
I deeply and completely
I deeply and completely
love and accept myself.
love and accept myself.
On your forehead,
I now release myself
I
I
now
now
release
release
myself
myself
afraid.
from
for
feeling
so
so
afraid and
so
so
alone
alone
in
in
the
those
four
four
event.
events.
On top of the head, I now release myself
I now release
from
myself
feeling so deathly afraid
from feeling so deathly
that
afraid
I was going to be hurt
that I was going to be
in
hurt
that four event.
in that four event.
I now release my subconscious mind
I
I now
release
release
my
my subconscious mind of
keeping me locked in
in
that
that
four
four
event. On the side of the head, I now release myself
I now release myself
from feeling so frightened
from feeling so
and
frightened
so afraid
and so
in
afraid
that four event.
in that four event.
So bad. Corner of your eyes. I now release myself.
I
I
now
now
release
release
myself
myself
Everything that frightened me.
from
everything
everything
that
that
frightened
frightened
me
me
in that
that
four
four
event. Underneath the nose, I now release myself
I now release
I
myself
now release
from
myself
feeling so afraid
from
from feeling so afraid
in that four event.
in
in that
four
four
event.
event.
I now release myself
I now
I now
release
release
myself
myself
from all these emotions I'm still feeling.
from all
all
these emotions I'm still feeling
because of that
because
four
of that
event.
four event.
All my collarbones, I now release myself
Now release
and I
myself
release my body
And
I release my
from
body
carrying the burden,
from carrying the burdens
feeling so afraid
of feeling so afraid
because of that four event.
because of that four event.
I am safe.
I
am
am
safe.
safe.
I am loving.
I am loving.
I'm kind.
I am kind.
I'm a really good person.
I'm a really good person.
I'm gentle.
I'm gentle. And I am guided and protected.
And
And I'm guided and protected.
Feels like a lifetime, doesn't it?
calm.
You've done that with me before, but I have not. I think we did it with pain. And so that was a totally different experience.
This is how the techniques work. And so what we do is we follow a beautiful pathway of certain, we have particular points. Each person will always take us to the most important things first, because that first things you bring to the surface.
Sure.
And I believe too, Megan, we spend a lot of our time trying to think our way through this life. And it's a feeling path.
Yeah.
Without our feelings, we miss out on the cues, the opportunities, if you will. And we have to do so much work to think. We're trying to create a reality where we're thinking constantly. And it's hard work whenever really all the work, if you will, is in the feeling. But first, we have to stop being afraid to feel,
Well, and
because they hurt.
I think there's also a lot to be said for the fact that so many of us were never really taught how to feel, what it is we're feeling, like to understand our feelings. And that was such a big thing for me, because what I felt on the inside and what I was experiencing on the outside were so polarizing that it was impossible for me to know who I was. And one of the reasons that the new tribe is such a passion for me is because I have thought. I am extremely cerebral about things, and I will understand it from every facet that I can possibly conceive of to look at something. And so I've put in a tremendous amount of work. And then once I get to a certain point, I'm like, God, it didn't even have to be that hard.
We all get to that.
And that's why I am so fascinated by and appreciative of the technique that you've developed and the work that you do, because I know that it is a tremendous service to enter an emotional space with someone like that when you're really feeling into them. And I understand where y'all are coming from because we've looked at your human design.
And we're not quite there yet. So I have to ask you a question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you now in that 4 event?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say that it's probably now a 2 or a 3. And it's we always talk about spherical time. It's almost like that 4 event version of myself now has the connection to my current self and can feel like now I'm connected to that part of myself. So in that time and that space, which I understand always exists and is always being experienced, now she knows that I'm here. Just
Which brings us to a little fun experiment if you want to try it.
why not? Y'all already made me cry once.
Because I love this experiment because this is you reconnecting all the portions of yourself that you've left across time. So we're using one tiny, what seems like insignificant event, but it's not. It's so huge, as we'll keep explaining as we go through this. But for now, because you said that connection is open, I want you to close your eyes. We're here with you. And I want you to feel her, that 4-year-old, as she is so frightened. And let me know when you've connected with her. Okay. And you feel her fear. And I want you to approach her and I want you to say these words to her out loud. I am so sorry they scared you.
I'm so sorry they scared you.
I love you.
I love you.
You have been so brave.
You have been so brave.
You're so courageous.
And you're so courageous.
I love you.
And I love you.
And I'm so sorry.
And I'm so sorry.
I left you here.
And I left you here.
Forgive me.
Please forgive me.
I love you. You're a really good person.
You're a really good person.
Now pause with her for a moment. Does she believe your words?
Yes.
Now spend a moment with her and just love her for a moment and tell her she's safe. Because here we are now, in this now moment. And you can invite her into here with you. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, replay your 4 event. And how is the 4-year-old feeling now?
I feel like she's not there. She's with me. She's in the place that she dreamed of being in to get her through all those times.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you see, Megan? And this anybody, the people of your audience and of the new tribe that are following, these are things that you can do just by watching and listening to this podcast. Be brave. Go into these emotions, because when we numb ourselves and we forget how to feel,
Yeah.
and we start to numb ourselves, all of a sudden we wonder where all the joy goes in our life. We wonder, where has all the emotion gone? Where's all the excitement gone in our life? And we don't realize it's always been us shutting it off.
Yeah.
It hasn't been anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all because we're afraid to feel. Why are we afraid to feel? Because we were hurt. They scared us. And to a child, to a 4-year-old, whose only ability in that moment is survival mode, to freeze, to not say anything, to take the beating if a beating was there.
Forget.
Yeah.
Forget.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that thing.
Yeah.
Because many of those experiences, if we couldn't forget about them, we would not be able to continue. Her ability to forget made sure that when we woke up the next day, we had the smile back on our face and still wanted to go outside and play with our friends and just have the life we deserve. That is
a great gift.
Mm-hmm.
But forgetting as you get older becomes uncomfortable because then you want to have remembering. You want to be able to carry yourself through from one moment to the next moment. And it feels so painful to forget our higher self. So when we make an advancement and we're feeling so glorious and we say, well, I'm never going to feel off again. I'm never going to get angry again. I'm never going to. And then darn it, the next day you're back to it again. Why? Because if we haven't turned off, if we haven't actively turned off the forgetting on purpose, then we just keep doing it. We keep doing it over, not because we want to, but because our body has that switch on, and it's a habit now, and something we now it's just become a part of our character. But we have the ability to switch on and off everything, and you don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to buy anything special. You don't have to do anything. But when you feel your emotions come up on any topic, just pause and tap. You are worth 60 seconds of time. This whole sequence takes just a little over a minute.
Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime goes through when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But within maybe a minute, 30 seconds, we're complete. Because we like to go a little longer because we like we love the proclamation. So we like to kind of stay in there for a little while and put in the new script, put in the new script. This is the truth of who you are. Now, I am loving. I am good. I am kind. And if I feel like any of those things I don't resonate with, okay, even though I don't feel good today, even though I don't feel like I'm being a person, and get rid of that until you finally do come back to who you really are. Yes, that's who you were to begin with, and you can't fight that.
We never lose our innocence nor our purity. It's always within us. It's just we have learned how to not feel that way anymore because somebody hurt us at one time. And then whenever we hit our late 20s and early 30s, all of a sudden turmoil starts in our life and we feel like we're alone in all these emotions. We feel like we're alone and nobody understands us, and we have these things coming forward. I remember whenever I was in my late 30s, I believe, whenever I finally remembered my sexual assault, whenever I was assaulted and raped as a child. I had been blocking it out since I was 11 years old. But boy, when it came rushing forward, and you know what brought it forward was I was tapping. And I finally hit that point where my fear factor had gone down inside of me, and I could let this come forward. And as it came forward, then I was able to release it and finally understand it. But I also understood so many things. I wouldn't trade that event for anything, because by that time in my life, there was so many things that I was able to accomplish because of that event, because I'd learned how to, have this rock foundation inside of me with my emotions. And then I realized what I was missing out on. I was missing the joy in my life. And so that's where it all comes in.
The 30s is about as long as your body can hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually why most of us hit a peak.
This is why we see a drug problem. Yeah.
And I feel, again, this is another stage of that neural development. We think, this is the biggest one. We think that we're adults when we hit our 20s. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
We don't hit adult brainwave frequency until 40. So all that lead in your 30s, this is why the 30s are such I almost want to say a traumatic time in life. That age can be...
Because everything's coming forward in that time.
Everything's coming forward. Your body basically says, look, this is all I can do. I've held you this many years. I cannot hold you. So this is when we usually get the sickest, when we get the most out of our mind, this is when we kind of make the hugest changes, and we're ready to tear everything apart. But it's just simply because we can no longer be in two separate places at once, and we are yearning for that unification of ourself with ourself again.
I have lived that exactly as you're explaining it. So when I was a teenager, I was probably about 15 when I began menstruating. I always had tremendous problems, like from the beginning. And then by the time I was 29, it had progressed so badly that I needed a hysterectomy. And so I'd lived all these years with chronic debilitating pain and disease, and then had my hysterectomy, which was a really difficult decision to make, but it gave me my life back in so many ways.
But as a complication of the surgery, I had a pulmonary embolism a week later. And when I had my embolism, I laid in the hospital bed, and the doctors are like, "You're young, you're healthy, you're super fit. Like, we have no idea why this would happen to you." But I did. It put me in a position where I was laying in the hospital bed for days, thinking about if I'm going to see my kids again, thinking about if I'm going to go back to my life, just thinking about all of the things and facing the very real fact that I may not. And so, as I thought about all this, I was like, I am not happy enough to die. If I died, I would have felt like I had just wasted the opportunity of life. And so I made a promise to myself that if I got to go home, then I would be happy enough to die next time it came around. And that was at 30. I had the surgery just a few months after I turned 30. And that was like, I'm turning 30 to begin with, and I always struggled with aging. And then I'm getting this old lady surgery for my birthday. And I'm like, it was a whole existential crisis that then just went to the next level. But then at that point, I did come home and I started making a lot of changes, which then led the following year to the end of my marriage and just a huge it didn't matter anymore what the impact was from people who were not willing to also make changes, because I had seen viscerally the possibility of not actually experiencing my life just to make other people happy, that weren't happy anyway, that were never going to be happy regardless of what I did. And so then that really is what began my whole spiritual journey, because at that point it was like I couldn't just sit back, and being a mom is my greatest gift and my first purpose in this life, but it's not the only thing I'm meant to do. And in that version of me was trying desperately to find peace with that's all that I am. And here we are 5 years later.
We're very happy that you chose to stay.
Yes.
And look, you still have the ability to give birth because you've given birth to the new tribe.
Yeah.
And so now you've got to do something completely new.
Mhm.
And now you're bringing information to people that are going to touch their souls and help them to realize, there's so much more to life that I can experience. There's so much more I can do. Everything you're bringing forward to people, Megan, is going to have a positive impact. That's quite a motherhood thing to go through.
Mhm.
I would add to that too, that it's difficult to say sometimes because nobody wants to wish anybody to have a bad experience or a traumatic experience. But you have shown us the example of sometimes having a necessary, big experience that literally just shakes you up and reinvites you to live life differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I bless these kinds of things. I would love to have met you, like let's say at 25,
Yeah.
and start talking with you,
Yeah.
and to see if we could have changed your pathway. But here's the thing, you see, there is no wrong way. You had to go through that because you went through it. So we have to honor the fact that whatever we went through up to this moment, however we went through it, was perfection.
Absolutely.
Except that the only thing is with this perfection, okay, it's perfection, yes, granted. However, does that mean that you should still have unconscious parts of yourself that are unexplored and working against you? Should you still have bad feelings towards yourself? Should you still have dis-ease in your body? Do you deserve to feel bad? Or are all these things just the results of that stuff that happened? But now we have the right as sovereign beings to finally move the way we want to move. And again, Denise, we said earlier, I should have pom-pom.
Yeah.
Because I'm always going to bring it back to this. Why? Because it doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter what path, whether it be, it doesn't matter which path I take. every single time when I'm in a moment of uncertainty, I just reach for myself. I tap on my hands. I speak the words to myself, and I free myself in that moment.
Mm.
You see?
And what a tool that is.
Right?
Absolutely.
So yes, we went through all these things. Yes, there's perfection in that because we've already gone through them. But we have the right as sovereign beings to find peace, calm at any state we want to feel at any moment. And this is, I feel, what this.
And if I may add to what you were saying, also cause this, because you can have a traumatic event in your life. Like, how do we change? How do we change? We change through one of two ways: traumatic event or constant speech repetition. We say choose constant speech repetition because this is the easiest way. And this is exactly what we do when we do take people on the feeling path with us. We take them through this painless shift through their own emotions so that they do not have to build that momentum up to have that traumatic event where all of a sudden their body, something happens in their body, or they have to have that accident, or they have to have that thing happen before they finally wake up. You know, if that's what you want to experience, it would never take that away from you. Exactly. But we do know there's an easier way.
Yeah. Well, and that is my point as well. Like, that's why it's so important to me to share work like yours. To the new tribe, to me, is not, this is not a tribe that I am over. It's not my following. It's us as a group, a collective who share an intention, and the intention is to, we don't have to do it the hard way. I realized in my own retrospect that everything that happened that I didn't understand was all balanced, block upon block, on top, one on top of the other. I, as a teenager, became incredibly ill because I had so much stored and trapped trauma from sexual abuse. And it was manifest very early, but then it was also neglected, and emotionally it was neglected, and psychologically it was neglected. And while I was spending my time working on myself, and one of you mentioned about, we as we go through our different phases of development, and then once we hit that adolescent, or maybe it was past adolescence, where we just start running on our programming because that's what we know. And that became acutely highlighted to me when I became a mom, and when my first son was 2 years old. And you know how the terrible twos can bring out the worst in you. And that was the moment when I realized, like, I'm not going to be the kind of parent that's going to sit here and yell at my 2-year-old like he knows nothing. And I felt the rage that I had experienced, but there was just this part of me that absolutely refused to allow it to perpetuate. And so then, as you know, trying to process that in a new way just became this tremendous struggle. And trying to navigate that on my own, and then also navigate being a new mom, it became so, so important to me. So I had done this for years. I had my first son at 20, so I'm 22 at this point, and I'm doing all this healing. I'm navigating all of this. I'm 22 years old, and then it wasn't until 30, 8 years, I'm doing all of this work, and I'm trying so hard, and I'm overcoming things, and I am making progress in certain ways, but the deep rooted issues were still there, which I had no ability at that point in my life to connect to understand. And so for me, I had to go through all those things so I would be here. So I would have a passion for this work, for this journey, so that I could bring it to other people who also don't know. This is not, we are not taught. You're super blessed if you grow up in a family that teaches you any sort of emotional intelligence, or how to self manage, self care, regulate, any of it. It is, thank goodness. And that that in and of itself, that alone, this last decade or so that we've all been so called to heal in some capacity, in some facet of healing, we've all had this call. And more people are like, okay, what does it mean? What am I doing? And so that's why it was so important to me to have you two here so that we can share this information, because it doesn't have to be hard. We do not have to get hit by a truck.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was intentional. Yes.
But yeah, it would be nice actually if we all didn't have to take such a hard route.
Yes.
And however, um,
And sometimes we do when we can help each other.
absolutely. But you know, sometimes it's funny too. I think as creator beings, we like a little bit of contrast, honestly, because we meet sometimes people who don't have a lot of bad things happen to them, only have a smidgen, and everyone sometimes will hold on to the most turmoil. And I find it's because they're almost like searching for insight. Yeah, a story. There's a line that Danny often says that I love so much about the dreamy. Good.
Oh, oh yeah, from that movie Australia with Hugh Jackman in it, and they're talking about small Aboriginal boy, and he said the boy has to go on his walkabout,
Mhm.
and the character of Nicole Kidman said, well, but she loved him, she wanted him to stay. And she didn't want him to go because it's a big world, and he was just a small boy, and he said he has to go on his walkabout, so he's got a story to take back to the dreamy. Without a story, there's no dreamy.
I know we have to have a story. And at the end of the day, we can be the victim of the experiences, but we have to have a story, because that's the whole point. Like, why else would we be here? Why would we be living if it weren't for living? And good, bad, or ugly, that's life.
It's time to turn the page. It's time to end the chapter.
And
It's time to let go of our need to be victims or to write a story from
exactly.
a point of view. We've done that. We've created all kinds of wars around it.
Yeah.
And it's in the victimhood that creates all the disease within our body. And it's that disease that eventually makes us want to expire and say, well, here, I'll come back and I'll do it again and next time. Because you will be back, because you're eternal.
Yeah. My soul said this time, you will not forget. Do something different.
It's so funny. Imagine yourself sitting around. We're all sitting around because we all know each other, obviously. If we're in company right now, it means we've been hanging around with each other for a long time, many lifetimes. But imagine we said, okay, what are you going to take in this time? Well, I'm going to go on. I'm going to take some of this and some of this and some. Ooh, I don't know whether I want to try that, but I'm going to try some of this over here. And we're all kind of picking what we can do, because we can say, I can go in there, thoroughly forget, have all these traumas, and I'm so good at this. I'm going to remember who I am, and I'm going to come out the other side, and I'm going to teach others how to do this. And maybe this is part of the fun of the game of life, that just knowing that we have been doing this for a long time. And so this one we chose this time, and I'm going to thank every one of us, for everybody who's involved in this, because this time we decided enough with the old story, enough with the anger, enough with the fear mongering, enough with the hatred, enough with all those off feelings. Let's create something we've never done before. Just let's create from that path of feeling, sensation, and love.
And love, which is the ultimate, all that is. So might as well just accept it.
So let's feel our way through life.
So we've been going the fear path for a while, and now
We've been on
to
it for a
choose
while.
the love path.
What Danny's book says, at the end of fear, there's something brand new to have.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Okay. Are you ready? I did not know until the other day when we came to visit you at the bus that this is the first time you are seeing a physical copy of your book. So Paul wrote this fascinating book called Driver's Seat, and I'm going to let you hold it for the first time now and share it with us. Congratulations. What an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you so much. It was ready. It was ready to be let out into the world.
I've gotten to skim through it a bit.
May I tell you a little bit about
I would love it. Please share with us.
So it took me 9 years to write.
Okay.
So it was a
time traveling manual.
it took a little time to actually write. So it was written over the course of 9 years. It is primarily what I would call channeling, but it's channeling. It's me. We're not externalizing. It is simply tuning into. Maybe I need a new word. Tuning into the energy that's me along my own timeline.
Yes.
Okay. However, it's a universal timeline because we're all.
Yes.
Okay. So the book is, of course, the novel. So it's meant to be written as I mean, read as like a story, but it's also a companion. It's actually a manual, and so it's really meant to be a friend that guides you and that grows with you over time. So I'm
I'm so excited for you.
well, I'll just read you a little section,
Please.
okay? Because so everything is alive. We exist in a living multiverse, so vast and infinite that we have long ago released our collective need to understand that. It is, and so we accept its being as complete, and ask now that you also accept and release yourself from this reality bubble. The new reality you create will set forth a new wave of consciousness that will ripple out into the collective with a magnitude yet unseen and as of yet unknown. You are that. It is so. Your duty, if you prefer to see it that way, has to be now to release yourself from the imprisonment of our current platform. The story must be written forward. So write yourself free.
That's beautiful. If that doesn't, did you open to that randomly or did you pick? Does that not perfectly sum up our conversation?
I believe this
That's-
is the biggest thing that if I could speak for Kaw on this book is so amazing. Is because it is this companion book that when you carry it around, there is always a message in there for you. You just open because it's timeless, and I believe time traveling manuals as you travel through time with this also. That it's quite remarkable the insights you gain from it.
Now we've been testing it for the last because I wrote it in 2017. So for the last how many years is that now? 7 years? Has it been 7?
Yes.
So for the last 7 years, we've been selling this book just hand in hand. So basically, and those people who have the original copies, I'd say hold on to your copies because they're going to be collectors one day because they have their own cover, they look different. But this one here, this one I felt I was finally ready to release out into the world. So
Here it is.
so you can read it forward, of course, but you can also read the book backwards, and that's what really makes it fun. So the book actually, if you read it right from the back, is also the beginning. And the way you read it is you read the segment here, and you move up, and you basically read the whole thing in that
From the bottom of the page up, right to left, page to page. Okay.
that's the page. So if you do that, if you do decide to read the book both forward and backward all the way through, it creates a it creates a synchronization in your brain. Your brain actually synchronizes. It's like it's sewing the two hemispheres together. Because when your eyes actually witness something, the same thing, but completely in reverse, and it makes sense to you, and something clicks in the brain that actually begins to activate that full compartmental use. So we're no longer having to go from one side to the other side, from one side to the other, which, by the way, can be exhausting. But we can finally focus ourselves the center, the heart of who we are, and now direct the entire flow of our own brain mass, which I believe is our right as human beings to do.
Oh, I agree with you.
So this is like a passive way to do that.
That's so cool. I'm so excited to read it. That's incredible.
And there are clues in there
Little Easter egg.
that if you resolve them, it is going to put you that much closer to finding the solution of time travel as you wish.
And that's a fact.
That is a fact.
Everything in here that's necessary to movement through time, not in the Hollywood version of things, but in the true how to move yourself in time, is in here. And I always kind of wonder how much should I say about it, because I'm always just waiting. Will people figure out what else is hidden inside here? Because the book is not written in a traditional way. You'll notice there's no mention of me. There's not a picture of me. There's no biography.
Table of contents.
Table of contents. It's not just
right in.
you're right. It's supposed to be right from the moment you open, right to the moment you close. You're in it.
Yeah.
Because it's about taking this book and weaving it into your life, making it part of your experience. That's why I've always liked it to be sort of like easily accessible, so you can have it with you, so you can put it in your purse.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what you start noticing is that it begins to harmonize with you, synchronize with you. So when you're, for example, let's say you're driving, because I like numbers, you see license plate and you go, okay, 1131. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so page 11. Okay, or 1131. I might go 131, first paragraph. Depends how I feel it. So I said 1131 to 11. So I go to page 11, and I see what message it's giving me. So 11, and let's say 3, 1, 2, 3. Everything is shifting, especially you.
And that's always powerful.
Right? So it'll always lend you a moment. And my initial, before I started writing this, all I wanted was a book that wouldn't let me down, that would lift me up, that would fill me with love. I wanted something that was built on love. I'd written many, many, many sad poems.
Yeah.
I'd written many sad things, and I knew what that felt like. And I was like, can I do something that doesn't have to be sad or hurting or coming from that point of view? And this.
So this book was truly a product of your work, of you moving yourself and more into this frequency of love through your creation.
Definitely at that base level, yes.
And that's why you can, when I received the book, started reading through it. Oh, thank you. I'm going to have you sign it for me as well. When I started reading through it, I did immediately notice, because the first page I was like, oh, it's like a little dedication. But then I was like, wait, there's no title page. There's no table of contents. You're just in it. And so I was immediately captured by that. But in your words, you can feel that they were put together and written down with this energy of love and intention around truly just sharing your heart and your own self and knowing. So thank you for sharing it with us. I'm looking forward to reading it and getting the kids to read it as well.
Thank you so much for giving me this moment. This was a priceless moment.
Well, you earned it. I mean, that's incredible. I'm also a writer, and we've talked about it, that I'm like, maybe I'll write a book someday, but who knows? But it's so,
This inspires.
it does, to have your years and years of work here in my hands now. That's so amazing. So congratulations. All right. So tell our listeners the name or the title of the book and where they can find it.
It's
Driver's Seat, a time traveling manual. You can find it on Amazon. Just go into Amazon and type in Driver's Seat Time, and it'll be right there for you.
I love it. Thank you so much. And Danny, you are also an author.
I am. I wrote a book called Fear, Phobias, and Freedom. It is an opportunity for people to step into finding the source of their own phobias and fears and where it all came from. So the base ingredients of all. It was based on a series of workshops that we used to do, and the data that we collected from it. And it is a good read. It's a good read. It's and it's informative because it gives you a knowledge of how did I get to here? How did I get within all these fears? And then we give you a solution to find your way out also. So that is all within that book. It is also available on Amazon. So it's a second edition now. That's on Amazon. First edition's out there also, but I would say read the second edition. It's much better.
Yeah. Fear, phobias, and freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
We will have them in the show notes for anybody who would like to go and support your work. And as you have noticed today, I'm a big fan of a book collection. So I always like to pick up one that I'm like, I just want to have it when I'm ready to read it. So I always have a hard time turning down a book.
Thank you so much for giving us this experience.
And this opportunity too to speak about our passions and to speak about the work that we do and to give us this opportunity to speak to your audience and speak to the new tribe and to hopefully give them some insight too as to there was never anything wrong with you. You had things happen to you and you've never been broken. You've always been divine perfection. And it's so funny because I say to people at the shows, anytime you think you're defective, I said, I've got God on speed dial on my phone. So call him up and you want to tell God how defective you are, how God created a defective one. None of us are defective. We decided to take on this load, if you will, this experience, better phrasing. We decided to take on this experience when we came in here to be able to fully comprehend ourselves. So that to be able to, at the awakening of it all, to realize that you truly are divine and that you're good and that you're loving and that you're kind and that you're compassionate. And one of my favorites, that you're magnificent. You are magnificent. And it's with that, when you carry that in your heart and you can feel yourself rise, you can feel your chest expand when you say these words to yourself. Now you're into the feeling part of life.
That's where we like to.
And that's where we want.
All right. That's where we're striving for. Into the feeling in the body. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for taking me on quite the journey. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to learn from y'all, not just today and all of the time that we get to spend while you're here. And so I hope to have you back again before you fire up the bus and head back north. Yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being with us today. And please, if you feel called to, go to Danny and Kaw's website, which is giveuppain.com.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And you can find all of their information, contacts linked in the show notes, and give the tapping a try. Yeah, everybody's so into biohacking right now, and that's kind of a little hack.
This is
Bringing you very, very like into the moment, but in multiple moments in a kind of quantum way.
You're gonna get all excited as soon as I start talking. Let me tell you all about it because it is the key. It is that, you know what it is? It is Dorothy's red slippers.
Oh, it is. Tap, tap, tap. I love that. There's all these little Easter eggs in the world for the things that what it takes. We call them truth drops. They just exist. So thank you for sharing with us today. We love you very much. And we'll see you all next time. And as always, go with love.